Hey everybody, it's Cody with After 5 Outdoors, and today we're going to be talking about the elephant in the room.
How's it going, guys? I'm Tony Elwell, State Conservation Officer out of the Thief River Falls area. Today we're going to just do a basic run through of our 2020 bear hunting regulations, give you guys a little better idea of what's going on.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching today. As we mentioned before in the intro, today we're going to be talking about the 2020 bear hunting regulations, and we're going to be talking about baiting. We're going to be talking about basically everything bear hunting. When you watch the video, if there's a certain thing that you were watching this video for, the different topics will be broke down in the timeline, so you can go to the timeline in the description and you can click on the period that you want to watch if you don't want to watch the whole thing. If you guys like today's video, if you guys like these In the Know series, kind of talking with the State Department of Natural Resources about hunting and fishing regulations, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. That's what drives the channel, and if you haven't, please subscribe. So with that being said, let's talk about bear hunting.
All right, Cody, good to see you again, man. Bear season, it's upon us. We're getting there. Yep. So our bear season will start on the 1st of September, run through the 18th of October. But prior to that, we bait, right? So our bait season will start on the 14th of August, all right? And that basically allows people to establish their stations, get everything set up. Hopefully they bring in some bears, and then they'll be able to hunt those bears. So that's kind of a rundown on our season dates and when things start. So in Minnesota, we've got basically two different areas that we can hunt. We have a quota area, which is basically an area much like our antlerless lottery areas, where there's a specific number of bear licenses that are available. And then we've got our no quota area, where there's no limit to the number of licenses that can be sold. So it's a lottery. You have to be drawn for those quota areas. So that lottery has come and gone. The application deadline, I believe, was the 1st of May, that you would have had to apply to get a quota license, and notifications should have already been sent out around June 1st, I think, if you were successful. You can also check our website too. If you go to bear hunting, and you can find lottery results, and you plug in your driver's license number or your DNR number, and it'll tell you if you're successful. So we got the quota, the no quota. Anybody can buy a license in the no quota area. Age 10 and up can hunt bears. No quota, the limit is one in the no quota, and the quota area limit is 1 as well. So you could potentially legally take 2 bears. If you were drawn for a quota license, you could take a bear with that, and you could also buy a no quota license and take a bear in a no quota area.
Would that be either sex?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's generally it's pretty difficult to sex a bear. So our limits, potentially 2 bears, 1 in a quota area, 1 in a no quota area. Now, if you're drawn for a quota tag, you have before the 1st, you have to purchase that license. The 1st of August, you have to purchase that license. On the 5th of August, any unpurchased tags or any surplus tags, if there's 200 licenses available in a quota area and only 150 people apply, there'll be 50 surplus tags. On the 5th, those go on sale to the general public, first come, first serve. So if you didn't apply or you didn't get drawn in a specific quota area, you still might be able to hunt in a quota area. Okay. So potentially 2 bears, 1 in a quota and 1 in the no quota. So bear hunting, ages 10 and up can legally hunt bears. At age 12, you need a firearm safety certification, or anybody born after December 31st, 1979. So at age 10, we can hunt bears. 10 and 11-year-olds don't need to have a firearm safety certification. They do need to be with an adult that does, however, or is exempt. So that would be somebody born after December 31st, 1979. So ages 12 and up would need that firearm safety certification. So it's basically our licenses. Legal firearms and bows for bears. Same big game cartridges, same big game archery equipment. I believe it's .220 and above caliber. And then obviously your archery equipment has to have a draw weight of at least 30 pounds or more. Spears are not legal in Minnesota. Only legal archery equipment and firearms are legal to take a bear. And I know that you had asked earlier about carrying a firearm during baiting. You are legally allowed to carry a firearm to bait during that baiting season on the 15th of August for protection reasons, obviously.
And that would be the same on private and WMAs.
Yep, in wildlife management areas, that's what we're specifically talking about. But yeah, it is legal to carry. Now, here's a thing that we run into from time to time. It's illegal to transport a loaded weapon. So if you're on your wheeler, you're in your pickup truck, you've got a rifle, and this goes for the bear season as well. An archery hunter is allowed to carry a firearm with them for protection while they hunt, a licensed bear hunter. But if you're on your four-wheeler or driving out to your stand in your truck, that weapon has to be unloaded. If we run into you're on your wheeler, you've got a loaded pistol and no permit to carry, that's going to be a violation.
You have an issue. You have an issue.
Yep. So our baiting season starts on the 14th of August. Certain things that you can and can't have as bait. Mammal bone, can't have it in any kind of form. So you can't have just plain mammal bones. You can't have any kind of meat that has mammal bone in it. You are allowed to use a carcass that's at least 25% or less of that carcass, but that carcass can't have any bone in it if it's a mammal. Okay, so no mammal bone whatsoever. You can use plain meats. You can't use any kind of swine unless it's cured, like ham or bacon or something like that. Materials, you can't have anything that's not readily biodegradable. So plastic bottles, pails, and we'll talk about the bait drum here in a minute, but plastic, glass, metal containers, anything to hold that bait can't be left out there with you or out at that bait site if it's not in attendance. So you could bring up, your bait bucket with you and set it out there, but that bucket's got to leave on public land. Okay. So those are the things that we can't have in our baits. We're allowed to have 3 baits at any given time. Those baits need to be registered. So let's say, Quota, you're going to go out 14th and you're hunting by yourself. Nobody's going to help you bait. You can go out, establish 3 baits, and you have to register those baits. Okay. There's 2 ways that you can register those baits. The traditional way was to fill out information, your name, address, DNR number, phone number, and then range, section, township of where your bait is, and then you mail it in. We now have, you're still allowed to do that, okay? If you choose to do it that way, you have to make sure that thing is postmarked no later than 1 day after you put the bait in. So if you put a bait in on the 14th, you have to have that thing in the mail. It's got to be postmarked by the 15th in order for it to be legally registered. So with COVID and things like that, obviously things are bogged down. That's going to slow down that process. Somebody has to physically take that piece of paper and manually log it into our system, and that's going to take time. For a number of years now, we've been able to do it online, which is way quicker for the hunter, way easier for the hunter, way easier for the people dealing with that registration website. Simple, go to the DNR website, look up the bear bait registration, follow the instructions. You will need a valid email address. Make sure it's an email address that you know the password to, because that's going to be connected with that for seasons to come. It's been an issue in the past where somebody forgot their email password and weren't able to register. So, like I said, online is the easiest way to do it. It's basically a map. You find the section that you're hunting, you drop the pin right where your bait is. You fill out the information that asks you for, boom, you're registered.
Now, just to reiterate, that applies to public land and private land, correct?
That's correct. All your baits need to be registered whether they're on public land or private land. Okay. And as I mentioned before, you can have 3 baits. So let's say, Quota, you go out, you put 3 baits out. One of them, find out it's not a really good spot, not getting any hits. You can take that bait down. You can abandon that station. You have to go back to the website and abandon it, and then you can establish another bait station somewhere else. You could do that with all 3 of them. Okay, you're only allowed to have 3 at any given time. So if you're going to establish another bait station, you have to get rid of at least one of them before you establish that additional one. And that means taking down the sign, getting rid of all the baits, and unregistering it or abandoning it on the website. Okay. Other things with bait stations. You have to have your license before you go out to bait, okay? You have to be only a licensed bear hunter or somebody acting for a licensed bear hunter can establish a bait. So you have to have your license with you if you're going out by yourself. Let's say you're not a licensed hunter, but you're tending baits, or you're going to establish baits for a friend who lives out of town or whatever. They have to have their license prior to you going out there, and you need to carry with you their Minnesota DNR number, so that if myself or one of my partners come upon you in the woods, you're baiting bear, we ask for your license, you tell us, oh, I'm baiting for my friend. We have to have some way to verify that yes, you are baiting for somebody else.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yep. Bear signs. We have to have a sign on our bear baits. It needs to be 10 by 6 and 18 by 24 inches. It can be made out of plastic, metal, wood. Okay, it has to be at least 10 feet off the ground. No higher than 10 feet off the ground. It must contain same things as our fish house. Either a name and address, your Minnesota DNR number, or your driver's license number. Now, here's where it kind of gets a little convoluted, so to speak. Again, let's say you're baiting for somebody else. If you're going to tend that bait, whoever is tending that bait, their information needs to be on that sign as well. Anybody who is going to hunt at that bait site, their information needs to be on there as well. So you could potentially have 6, 7, a bunch of different names. So basically anybody that's going to be involved with that bait, whether they're going to hunt there or whether they're going to tend that bait, their information, one of those 3 things needs to be on that sign. Bear guides, different. They've got different regulations for that. They know what that is, and if there's a outfitter out there that doesn't understand, they can check it out on our website. Pretty straightforward for that. As far as where you can place baits, you can't place a bait within 100 yards of another bait station. Okay, you can't hunt within 100 yards of a bait station unless it's registered. You can't place a bait within 100 yards of bait, whether it's deer feeders, for viewing wildlife, within 100 feet of anything like that was out there before the 14th. So if you've got a deer feeder that you got cameras on, that you're just checking out deer or whatever, and that's out there before the 14th, you can't you can't register a bait or legally establish a bait within 100 yards of that area. So
that makes sense. So you can't use that as a bait for the entire year.
Exactly.
And capitalize off of it. Okay. Yep. Okay, so a lot of people like to use barrels or drums for baiting, and in the past when I've bear hunted, I've used them as well. What's kind of the story with the drums?
So prior to last season would have been the first year that this was allowed, but prior to last season, drums were only allowed on private land. We weren't able to put drums on any kind of public land. Last year, that law was changed. Basically, in order to do that, if you want to put a drum on private lands, you have to pay a $5 surcharge for that drum, barrel stamp, whatever you want to call it. You're allowed to have 1 drum per bait station. So we're allowed to have three bait stations. You have the potential to have 3 different barrels, 1 on each bait station. And again, it's $5 for each one of those. That barrel has to be secured to a tree so that it can't be removed. It has to be 30 gallons or more. Okay, it can't contain any kind of mechanical device that would dispense food. Like those, I don't know what brand they are, but the deer feeders on the tripod with the little deal. Right. Those are not legal. That's not a legal barrel on public or private land. Can't have any kind of mechanical device, whether it's manually manipulated, wind, by motor, or anything. So that drum needs to be registered as well. When you're registering your bait, you have to give the same location. If you're doing it on the website, it'll ask you barrel, yes, no. And that barrel needs to be registered on that bait site. On the barrel itself, the same information. Either the hunter's name and address, Minnesota DNR number, or driver's license number needs to be on that barrel. In case for some reason it gets detached, we're able to know where it's at or who it belongs to. Can't have a barrel out before we're legally allowed to establish a bait on the 14th of August. Same rules apply to private land, with the exception, obviously, of the surcharge. There's no charge for somebody to put a barrel on private land, but the same rules. Has to be secured, has to be marked in the same manner, 30 gallons or more, all those things.
Okay, so for WMA, there is a surcharge on using a barrel, and then on private land there is not?
There is not.
That's correct? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we got to be careful. There are other public lands that barrels would not be lawful. Any kind of waterfowl production area that's federally governed. Nature Conservancy type lands that they don't allow any kind of foreign material like that, non-biodegradable stuff. So we're talking specifically WMAs.
Okay.
Other things, other just kind of little nitpicky things. You can't establish a bait station within 150 yards of an established campsite. For obvious reasons,
Yeah.
we don't want campers to be dealing with bears.
Right.
The Boundary Waters canoe area, baits are not allowed. You can hunt there. It's a quota area, but baiting would not be allowed in the BWCA. Within a half mile of a garbage dump station, you can establish a bear bait. Can't disturb dens. Back to the legal bear, it has to be an adult bear. Can't shoot a cub.
Okay.
This year's cub, obviously, it's pretty easy to tell the difference most of the time. But no white bears. Can't shoot a white bear. That's in the regulation.
Oh, really? Okay.
What you can do with a bear, you can't sell the meat. You can't sell the organs. So, bear gall, bladders, things like that. What you can sell are the bone, the claws, the hide, teeth. You can sell those. Otherwise, meat and organs cannot sell. Be unlawful.
So next we're going to kind of talk about dogs and stands a little bit.
Yep. So dogs, this is relatively new. I think it was last season this first came about, but we can't use dogs to hunt big game animals. However, we can use a dog to recover a wounded bear. There are certain regulations that govern it, though. You got to be a licensed hunter. Okay, so if you and I, let's say you shot the bear, you have to have a valid license. If I'm running the dogs, I'm with you. I couldn't just go out there without you out there. Okay. You would need to be present with that tag, okay, because you have to be present in order to tag that. We'll talk about site tagging and whatnot later, but so be with a licensed hunter with a valid tag or have a valid tag. You have to wear blaze orange. Normally during bear season you don't have to wear blaze orange, but in order to use a dog to recover, you have to have blaze orange, okay. You can use artificial light, but it has to be handheld. Or attached to your body, so a handheld flashlight or a headlamp, something to that nature. Dogs have to be on a leash that can be no longer than 30 feet, okay? And those dogs need to be under control at all times. So in other words, somebody has to have physical control of that leash at all times. You can't just let them go with that 30-foot leash, okay? Also with the dogs, they have to have the owner's name and address and phone number attached to them on a tag somewhere in case they do get loose and wind up, running around or whatever, and they get found. So that way, we have a way to get those dogs back to that owner. Bear hunters can leave stands in wildlife management areas starting during baiting season on the 14th of August. Okay.
Now, is that statewide now, or is it just in this northwest corner?
That's statewide.
Okay.
And they're allowed to keep those stands up overnight until the night before the opening day of archery deer season, which I believe is the 19th of September.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. So a portable stand can be left overnight as long as it's within 100 yards of that bait station. The other provision for leaving a stand in the WMA, it has to be signed. There has to be a sign with, again, one of those three things. Name and address, Minnesota DNR number, or driver's license number. And it has to be clearly visible from the ground. So obviously we don't want to be climbing up stands for liability and safety reasons, obviously. So we need to be able to identify whose stand that is from the ground. So it needs to be either attached to the underside. What a lot of folks do is they just put it on one of the legs or the rungs. Make sure that it can survive the elements. A piece of paper.
Gonna get wet and blow away.
Yep, it's gonna get wet, get nasty. Try to protect it from the rain. Secure it as best you can. but that does need to be on that stand. And again, within 100 yards of that bait station. And that's on our WMAs.
What is the proper thing to do after there is a kill?
All right, so Cody, you shoot a bear. It's just like deer season. The bear's dead, you walk up to the bear, you pull out your license, you have to validate that site tag immediately, just like we do during deer season, right? So we've got to cut out the day, the month, the time of day, everything the same as we would for a deer. We've got to validate that tag. That needs to be done before we touch the bear, before we move the bear, before we gut the bear out, before we transport it anywhere, hang it up, anything. Do it right away. Now, as far as attaching the tag, same rules as deer. If we're going to manually drag that thing out of the woods, if we're going to hook it up to a four-wheeler and drag it out of the woods, obviously we can't do that in a WMA. We are not allowed to have the four-wheelers in the WMAs, but if you're going to manually drag it out or drag it on the ground by a motor vehicle, that tag doesn't have to go on that animal before we transport that animal in a motor vehicle. So before we put it in the bed of a truck, throw it up on top of the rack of the four-wheeler, put it in a trailer that's attached to the four-wheeler or the truck. That tag, that site tag, needs to be attached to that animal. It can go through the sternum around the breastbone with a wire, zip tie, rope, or through the ear like a deer, between the tendon and the bone on the lower leg like a deer. Okay. So again, it's unlawful to transport an untagged big game animal. So it needs to go on to that animal before it gets loaded onto the vehicle. Again, if you're manually dragging it out or if you're dragging it out with the use of a vehicle, if it's on the ground being dragged, it doesn't need to be attached. Validate, tag it before it gets put onto a motor vehicle, and then we got to register. We've got 48 hours to register that bear. So we can register in person. There's several different registration stations. Again, with COVID, I'm sure things are going to be a little bit different, but I think there's a plan in place, and it's really not going to be that big of an issue with social distancing and masking and whatnot. But we can go there. We've got 48 hours to register. They're going to give you a registration tag that needs to be put on the animal before it can be transported. The other ways we can register, just like deer, we can do it over the phone. That number should be on your license. You can call that number. They're going to ask you a series of questions. You'll hit 1 for this, 2 for that, so on and so forth. They are going to give you a registration number. That registration number needs to be written down on the license, just like a deer tag. There's a little spot for your registration number. That needs to be written into that. And you can do it on the website. Same questions. And again, they're going to give you a registration number at the end of it. With bears, we have to submit a tooth for sampling. If you go to the walk-in registration stations, they're going to give you an envelope. On that envelope, there will be instructions of how to harvest the tooth and care for it and where to send it. If you're going to register online or via phone, you can also go to a walk-in station to secure one of those envelopes. There are other provisions, and it'll tell you in the bear regulations specifically what to do, but I believe you can clean a tooth, put it in a Ziploc bag, wrap it in tin foil or paper towel, put it in a padded envelope, and then there's a specific address that you can mail it to. Tooth sampling has to be done within 48 hours after the close of the season. So it doesn't have to be done immediately, but it needs to be done within 48 hours of the season closing. That's a violation. If this is something that happens year after year, you're probably going to receive a citation. So it's very important to our wildlife managers. It's an important tool for them as far as population estimate, aging, things of that nature, and just general research about bears. Okay. And matter of fact, anybody that, I believe it's November 1st, if you submit your tooth by November 1st, they are going to send you the age of that bear. They'll send you a little notice about how old that bear was. Okay. So that's something that's kind of interesting. Okay. So
it's kind of funny. I was watching a YouTube video last night about mountain lion hunting, and I think the state was Oregon. And when they brought the mountain lion in for the registration, whatever, the biologist took a part of the cat's tongue, and for DNA testing to see if that cat is related to other cats that are harvested in the area. So that was just kind of neat. It was kind of neat how they can do that, and it's interesting stuff. Okay, so we kind of touched on registration and kind of what to do after the kill. Now, kind of let's talk about gifting meat a little bit, or even before that, one thing that we were going to talk about was party hunting.
Mm-hmm.
We do that for deer in Minnesota. Is that something a person can do for bear?
No. Party hunting for bears is unlawful. Only a licensed hunter can shoot and tag a bear from their own license. So if you and I are out hunting, you're 100 yards away, I can't shoot 2 bears and you can throw a tag on, or vice versa, or whatever. You can only tag 1 bear that you shoot.
So when we talk about party hunting is big for deer, it is not lawful in Minnesota. So let's say
for bears.
For bears, yes,
right.
Yes. So let's talk about let's say I'm a bear hunter. I love to hunt bear, but I just can't eat them.
Mm-hmm.
What is the is there a process to go through? Like, let's say that you have a friend that just, hey, I love bear meat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll take everything you got. Can you legally gift your bear to that person?
You can. It's the same process as anything else. If, you want to give somebody some walleyes or some deer meat, all you need to do is have a piece of paper with your name, address, phone number, your DNR number, and basically say, I, Cody, give such and such, in this case 30 pounds of bear meat to Tony, and this is my information. They must keep that ticket with them, or whatever it is, that piece of paper with that meat until it's consumed. But that's legal to do, and that's how we do it, any kind of wild game, fish or wild game. So
going back a little bit, there's one thing that we need to clarify about the WMA situation with ATVs.
Generally speaking, ATVs are not allowed on WMAs. Obviously, in the Northwest, we have a little bit different provisions during the firearms deer season. But as far as during bear season, ATVs are not allowed on WMAs unless it's a state trail going through that WMA. Then we can be on the trail, but no off-road travel in WMAs. Now, state forests, it's going to depend on what kind of state forest it is. There's several different classifications, open, managed, certain things. That's going to be specific to whatever state forest you're in. So some of them may allow off-road travel, back in the woods, whatever. Some of them may not. So just make sure, if you're hunting in one of those state forests, that you know what kind of state forest it is and what the regulations are for off-road travel, whether it's an ATV or highway licensed vehicle. And generally speaking, most of those are going to be posted, somewhere on a trailhead or something like that in those forests. Okay. But again, WMA is not allowed to use it, not allowed to go drag a bear out of a WMA. Different than deer season up in the Northwest.
Okay, so in closing, just kind of wanted to ask you, throughout the year this year, have you had a lot of bear nuisance complaints? Like up in the Northwest part here, and probably I guess in the rest of the state also, we do generally get quite a few complaints on people calling in about, bears in their garbage, bears knocking down their bird feeders. Has this been a high call volume this year compared to other years, or is it?
I wouldn't say it's been ridiculously high. It seems as though we've had more calls, and whether or not that's because there are more bears being a nuisance or just more people are calling in reporting these things. Generally speaking, early in the spring and summer is when we see the most. Bears are coming into bird feeders and trash and dog food, whatever, because there's just not a whole lot of food out there. As the summer goes on, berries start to come into season and things kind of quiet down a little bit. But yeah, I would say we've had a few more this year.
This year has been more wet in particular, too, especially in like Kitson County, just north of us. It's been very, very wet, so I would assume that could
play a role as well.
Driving them out of the woods, sort of.
And the other thing is, once crops start to mature a little bit, they're going to start to wander off into the beans, and obviously once the corn starts coming in, that's a really big draw for bears. In Minnesota, if a bear is causing damage, a citizen, anybody, has the right to take that bear if it's causing damage, or obviously if it's threatening life in any way. Obviously, we would prefer if people would give us a call first. There's certain things that can be done and whatnot before they just go and shoot it, because we want to be able to utilize that animal if we can. We want to be able to find somebody who can use it. Obviously in the summer it's not going to take long for a bear to go bad. And a lot of times this is happening in the evening or late at night, and
you're going to call the next morning.
Exactly, and by then the bear is unusable. There is a provision, however, in state statute starting on the 1st of July. A wildlife manager or a conservation officer, we can activate a bear license early for somebody to go out and take a nuisance bear. So if we have a bear that's continuously being an issue, the traditional deterrents aren't working, and it's July 1st or later, we can find somebody to take that bear and to utilize it. So that's kind of a plus thing. When a person buys their bear license, they can annotate. They should be asked this question by the vendor, or if they're doing it online, but if they want to be included on a nuisance bear list. And generally it's going to be organized by quota areas. And so we'll get this list, and starting July 1st, if we get a nuisance bear that we got to get rid of, we're going to start at the top of the list and start calling folks. Okay, and if somebody, if nobody wants to take that bear that's on the list, we'll just start calling people that we know would be willing to hunt. The only stipulation is you're not allowed to bait for those bears. Okay. Obviously, we don't want to
draw more bears in.
Exactly. So, that's kind of the trade-off. You get to hunt early.
Any other things that you want to bring up over the bear season this year? It's baiting season is roughly like 20 days away.
Yep.
And it's getting pretty close.
Yeah, I just want to hit on same kind of big game rules, same types of things as deer hunting. Nothing special to bears, but again, transporting a loaded firearm, unlawful. It's not safe. We're not allowed to shoot at a big game animal or a decoy of a big game animal from a motor vehicle or from a public road right away. And that means the actual road, the shoulders, the slopes down into the ditch, up to the other slopes. That's the public road right away. So we've got to be off, not even down in the ditch. We've got to be off, either in, and again, you run the risk of trespassing too a lot of times with that. But again, it's unlawful to shoot at a big game animal or a decoy of a big game animal from a road right away.
Don't be shooting at decoys off the road, okay?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a bear decoy out there, but.
So we really appreciate you taking your time to do this, and appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
So if you guys like these, or to call these In the Know series, it's kind of just the rules and regulations of all the major hunting seasons and fishing seasons and stuff like that. If you guys like this stuff, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, where it's going, please subscribe. That's what drives the channel. Just appreciate you watching, and hope you enjoy this, and have a great day.